Now, did you guys know that most Americans actually have less than $10,000 in their savings accounts? So, according to this chart that I grabbed from Statista, based on a study done by YouGov, 57% of Americans actually have less than $10,000. And I know the word millionaire gets thrown around all the time, so in the whole scheme of things, $10,000 is actually very far away from $1 million. And $10,000 really isn't enough to live off of, especially if you're in the US like me. But believe it or not, $10,000 is actually a pretty significant milestone for many people, and it's definitely worth striving towards. Like how some YouTubers like to debate on whether the hardest milestone for YouTube is 100 subscribers, 1,000, or 10,000 subscribers, whatever that number is. But it's usually considered the hardest because that's at the point where you just don't have much. Not many subscribers, not many views, not much growth, not much in terms of experience, skills, technical knowledge, or knowledge of your audience or whatever content you like to make. And it's usually some sort of problem that keeps growth slow, but once you pass a certain threshold, you start growing a lot faster. That is similar to when you're trying to build wealth. The less you have, the more likely you are to still probably be working out issues that are preventing you from building wealth, or the less you are able to build wealth because money builds money. And just like YouTube, the more money you have, the faster you'll generally be able to grow wealth. For example, the more you have, the more your investments will work for you. The more you have, the more experts and professionals you can hire to build wealth for you. The more you have, the more business endeavors you can pursue, and this list keeps going on and on. So in this video, I'll be going over more in depth why the first 10K is so hard for many people, and also share some of my own thoughts on how to build towards and break past it. Now, why is 10K so hard for many people? So there's two sides to this that I can think of right now. But one side is that you're just really young and you're literally just starting out. In that case, you really just haven't had the time yet to build up your nest egg. So advice that I have for people here is to start learning what you can now so you can build off on a good foundation. The other side are folks that haven't yet been able to figure out the right income to expense ratio to maintain. Because building wealth is at a very high level just about making sure that you have more income than you have expenses. But there's definitely the phenomenon going on that most of you are probably aware of, but it's the phenomenon where many Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And I totally get it because bills are high, rent keeps going up, your landlords charge too much, utilities like water, electricity, and gas are super high. I totally get it. And there's a lot of bills, and those stingy employers definitely don't pay enough. And sometimes your raise doesn't even keep up with inflation. And yeah, inflation. Why are eggs so expensive right now? So trust me, I really do get it. But the good news is that there are still things that you can do despite all those other issues and those challenges. And I'll go over a few common challenges I've noticed and give some of my own tips on how to overcome them. And fair warning that not all of these tips may apply to you. It depends where you are in life. So take from this what you can and discard or table what doesn't work for you. Number one is similar to the advice that I gave to someone that's young and just starting out, but you might actually need more financial knowledge. But this one is fairly straightforward because it's usually the case where maybe you've never had someone teach you, or you haven't been able to yet spend the time to pick up a few tidbits here and there, because basic financial knowledge is stuff that you can probably get with just a few videos on YouTube, or maybe a few Google articles here and there. But that knowledge that you gain, that foundation that you can build off of, can literally be the difference between you living paycheck to paycheck versus having hundreds of dollars saved up. So to get started, which gets you much of the way there, learning finance isn't rocket science. And you don't need to be the greatest expert ever known to build a substantial amount of wealth. So if this is you, and if you don't know much about budgeting, about retirement plans like the 401k, or just having to keep up with inflation, then my suggestion to you is to take a few hours out of your day now and build up a starter pack level of knowledge on that basic financial knowledge. But one last note I want to make here is that while you're on your journey to pick up some of this basic information, I do want to warn you that there is a lot of bad advice going around. And if you're someone who likes to use Q&A forums or social media, maybe something like Reddit or Facebook or TikTok for your information, then it becomes even more muddy because there's so many people on there that just really, frankly, don't know what they're talking about. But they're very, very confident in their statements, which can lead you to take them at their word. And I'm not trying to say that everyone on there is trying to con you, but that's what con man is short for, which is confidence man. So sometimes their confidence can lead you to believe they're right. But even if it's not social media, even some more reputable sites, you might want to build up your own finance knowledge to really understand where their advice is just in general coming from, because you want to make sure it applies to your specific situation. And the more knowledge you have, the better you are able to judge that it's going to work out for you. So a few notes here, but don't just automatically assume that the most top voted comment or most popular opinion is correct. Sometimes it's right, but sometimes it's also wrong. And sometimes I know that there's an incentive to rush to social media for information because it's free, familiar, or quick. You get a quick answer. But while this statement may be a little corny, free advice sometimes is only as good as what you paid for it. And also, don't automatically take someone's word just because they have a fancy degree, a fancy certification or title or credentials, because you want to make sure that you're actively thinking for yourself, because ultimately you are your own responsibility, and you want to make sure that you take care of yourself very well. Number two is something that I see pretty often, but it's when you plan just for today. And when someone just plans for today, they really fail to plan for tomorrow, for the next year, or for the rest of their life. And this one, I'm not just talking about saving for your 401k or something like that, but it's actually a pretty common pitfall or challenge that I see, where if someone is doing okay right now, let's say they make 60k a year, takes home 40k a year, and only spends 20k a year. That means they have a profit or a savings of 20,000 every single year. And for a few years they live like that and they get comfortable with that specific type of lifestyle where they're only spending $20,000 a year. What sometimes happens is that they're so comfortable and they also assume that that same math carries on forever, but they don't take time to think about how things later on might change. Maybe that 40k becomes 30k for a few years, and that 20k becomes 40k, and now you're down 10,000 every single year. Because when you get older, there's certain milestones that generally might happen. For example, you buy a house, you have children, you get married, or maybe you have medical bills as you grow older. So if you're not accounting for your annual take home, or maybe in the case where you're accounting for your annual take home to stay the same, but you forget to take account for the months or accumulate years during times of layoffs or when you're resigning from your jobs and you don't make any money. Or maybe you're just extra generous with your friends or family right now because you have extra money left over at the end of each month. So this one is a pretty common one, a pretty common pitfall. And usually if you don't have a long-term plan, then you're at risk to spend more. And that's going to get you into trouble. So learn to budget now, start planning far ahead for basically your entire life. And yes, I totally know that the future is really hard to predict because even in business, forecasts aren't perfect. And the more years it goes out, the more difficult it is to predict with a lot of accuracy. And that's why I usually try to save even harder, because tomorrow things might not be as good as today. It could get better, and I really hope so, but I usually plan for at least the minimum viable living for myself. And then, based on my current situation, then I make exceptions or new decisions as the situation changes. And I'm going to leave this on this last note here, but I'm saying this now because some people like to say that there's no point in saving because you might die tomorrow. Well, the average life expectancy in the US is about 78 years old per the CDC. So there's a really high probability that you're going to live for a long time. So I think it's really worth betting on, in my opinion. So I'll leave you with those two notes for now, because this video is getting a little bit longer than I wanted it. But I'll probably plan on having a part 2, so if you want to hear my thoughts on that, you can just stay tuned and check in every once in a while. But if you like this video, then please hit the like button, please subscribe, leave me some of your own comments on what you thought about this video, anything else you want to hear me talk about, and thank you for watching.